Welcome to this edition of AWS On Air. This is our industry live session on power and utilities. I'm your host, Aileen Gemma Smith, Head of Developer Relations for Americas and Online at AWS. My pronouns are she and her. I have the distinct pleasure to welcome Rolf Gibbles, Head of Worldwide Business Development for Power and Utilities. Rolf, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Aileen. Thanks so much. Great being with you.
So excited to have you here this evening. So, first off, let's begin with introductions. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role.
Yeah, great. So I'm the head of global business development for power and utilities, which really entails many things. So this is my role really bridges from the strategy to solution definition to marketing to working with our partner team, startup team, deep solution architects, and very importantly with our compliance security team as we look at our customer in a very holistic way, and also with cloud economics to provide a really good overall experience to our customers who very early in the stages of digital transformation and towards more clean energy future. So that's what my role entails, and it's global. And obviously, there's a lot of really interesting dynamics around the world.
I can only imagine because you have so many aspects that you need to cover for that transformation. So what a privilege and what a responsibility to have that kind of coverage.
Yeah.
So to frame for our viewers for the show, as the world's population continues to grow, so does our consumption of energy and water. And to meet these growing needs, AWS provides power and utility companies the foundation to transform complex business and operational systems and to accelerate the transition to a more sustainable, decarbonized energy and water future. Which, again, the whole transformation is part of what I want to lean into in this discussion. So, as I understand it, Rolf, global utilities are grappling with the three Ds: decarbonization, decentralization, and digitalization. Can you help to put those trends in perspective for us?
Sure, I will. It's not the Nintendo game. I think there's a 3DS, so it's not those 3Ds. Um, yeah, so real quick, so decarbonization I think is very self-explanatory. It's really all about reducing our carbon footprint, reducing the way we use fossil energy, and applying more wind and solar, renewable energy.
Yeah.
Um, Digitization, as you can imagine, is a lot about sensors are growing more. We have sensors which are smarter. They're detecting maybe temperatures, wind conditions, wind speed, humidity. So there's a lot of data collected around the world or around with our customers, more and more devices. So very importantly around digitization is obviously how we apply a smart grid more intelligently. So there's a lot of things we can talk about around digitization. And the decentralization is really all about the fact that more energy sources are being applied. There's more creation. Wind and solar are very decentralized. They're not, I mean, you have some massive wind farms, but then you have rooftop solar, you have electric vehicles, new
Yeah.
loads. People talk about vehicle to grid, where a car might charge or give battery power back to the grid to balance it. So a lot, many more devices than in the past.
Right, right. And let's think about, well, what does that really mean if we want to lean into starting to become a digital utility? Because it almost sounds as though we're in a transformational stage that we're reshifting how we're thinking about things.
Yeah, let's dive a little bit more into the decarbonization aspect. So if you look,
Sure.
the there's so much more wind and solar being built. So actually by 2040, there will be 3 terawatts of more wind and solar being built. And just to put this a little bit in perspective, I mean, terawatts is a big number. So that's like 3,000 gigawatts. A gigawatt is about 1,000 megawatt. And if you have a good sized nuclear power plant or a very big coal fired power plant, that's about 1,000 megawatts. So you building a lot of assets, new renewable assets, which could in theory replace hundreds of thousands of traditional power plants. Obviously, wind is not always blowing, solar is not always, I mean, the sun is not always shining. So there's a lot of intermittency in there. So this is obviously has to be managed very differently. And that's why technology and IoT is becoming very, very important from an analytics perspective. But also, So it's a rise of wind and solar, and a lot has to do with this. I'm sure you have seen this in the news. Prices are coming down. We're talking about grid parity.
Yep.
Grid parity basically means that for the same price as you can generate energy with gas and coal, you can do with wind and solar, and now even lower. So once those curves met from a price perspective, I think the kind of the train left the station that utilities, that's where they're going to focus on. So you have a huge amount of countries, 65 countries, 150 cities around the world. I think in the US alone, there's 7 states making big
Yeah.
commitments. The European Green Deal by 2050 has a big ambition to be 100% renewable energy. So, and even COVID has driven a lot of those thinking investments as we all more sensitive towards our environment and climate change.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to lean into two things. First off, let's talk about what it starts to mean to become agile for our customers, and what are we doing to enable that innovation environment, because we are starting to see a shift. But then I'd also like to lean into thinking about, well, what are the differences in your global role and in what you're seeing between what's happening in Europe and the US and throughout the rest of the world?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, agile, being able to innovate more is needed because the system really now changes. Before was very much utilities focused on the asset, building more assets, big power plants, big infrastructure systems. Now it's all about flexibility. The digital transformation really enables flexibility and the system's diversity also across the value chain. So you need flexible delivery, so creation,
Yeah.
flexible generation, flexible delivery, and also flexible demand. So, and the flexibility that your system needs also requires the customers to have a more agile and flexible environment. And also that environment allows them for more innovation because really the industry is, I was like flipped around completely from a very asset centric
Yep.
business to a very customer focused or customer centric business. And that dynamic is still very, very new for utilities. So
Right.
that drives a lot of new innovation, and at the same time, utility though has to provide reliable, affordable, and secure energy. I mean, these are always the 3 principles of a utility to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's think about the differences in what we're seeing between Europe, the US, and other regions throughout the world, because I would imagine that different regions are at different stages in how they're innovating and
Yeah.
in their journey to being more agile.
Yeah, that's always really interesting, the dynamic, right? So let's start with Europe. Already a while ago, the UK is always a good example. Even in the 80s, they started to deregulate their market. When you deregulate your market, it really means that instead of having very few utilities, which often were, or are typically were a monopoly, control the market. Once this opens it up and you separate generation, transmission, distribution, um, and then the consumer side often, I mean, there's different models, but let's say those all three were separated,
Yeah.
that allows more competition. So on the sun, you have hundreds of retailers instead. Before you have a handful, now you maybe could have hundreds of retailers, and they're all competing with each other. For them to be able to do this, cloud is really the only place to make this viable and cost effective. You know, speed. Again, we talked about agility. So a lot of those smaller players became also really big in this space. Actually, at this conference at reInvent, we have, for example, Octopus presenting, which is a good
Hmm.
example who started this way and provides really valuable services for their own business, for their customers, but also even for other utilities. So Europe is interesting. Germany, France, every country has slightly different dynamics, but definitely a lot more deregulation took place in Europe. Therefore, much more cloud adoption early on, in our view, more innovation. And
Yeah.
on top, renewable, if you look at Germany, renewable adoption was much, much faster. If you look at the big offshore wind farms in Northern Europe, the US is just beginning to build offshore wind farms. So it's a big difference. And then in the US, well,
Yeah.
there's other dynamics, right? But you also start, there's deregulated markets in Texas. So you see a different dynamic in Texas versus markets where it's regulated. However, we also hear from our customers that even when you regulate it, there is more competition because through rooftop solar or companies taking on their own power purchase agreements, they could maybe pull away from what they thought a monopoly is from those utilities, and actually, there's load defection and other challenges. And just one last thought. So Australia and New Zealand is also very interesting. They always been on the forefront of very effective and good, first of all, cloud adoption, but
Mhm.
also implementing more and more renewable energy and big goals around decarbonization. And again, there's some also partnerships we can talk about a little bit. We created on that topic in New Zealand. And so I think US, Europe, and Australia, New Zealand have interesting dynamics. Japan, one other example is coming, they're being deregulated. So we'll see very similar dynamics in Japan as we have seen in the UK. So for us, it's the opportunity to be there and talk to our customers and help them through this journey.
Right, and really truly becoming customer centric.
Yeah.
So let's think about putting these trends in perspective and how that aligns with the different types of solution categories that we have available for customers.
Yeah. So let me, also, our job really is in business development. I mean,
Hmm.
anybody who listens to our show has hopefully listened to many of the reInvent sessions, and you see there's hundreds of new services. So
Yes.
our job really is bringing this into a format, if you want, all the new compute, storage, IoT, machine learning capabilities, and make them really meaningful for our customers. So we created 5 solution categories. The first one, or it's not a really a step, but like IT
Yeah.
transformation,
Okay.
operational technology transformation, OT. Then we have
Yep.
work and asset optimization, energy supply transition, and then customer engagement. So these 5 are really our pillars we talk to our customers. So the conversation becomes a lot more an outcome
Yeah.
conversation, a value conversation, than just talking about technology. And as I said earlier, to bring in then the security, the compliance team,
Yeah.
the cloud economics team to help people through this cloud journey of moving from on-prem to the cloud is obviously part of our thinking across those 5 solution categories.
Yeah, absolutely. And focusing really on the outcomes because just because there are tools out there, well, what's my so what, right?
Right.
How does this make a difference for the particular region that I'm in and what we need to do differently? So let's talk about some of the regulatory hurdles and security challenges because I understand that utilities are also really confronting some unique regulatory hurdles, security expectations, and how they're dealing with the cloud that you would expect, because obviously they're critical infrastructure. So, can you speak to some of those security needs and help us understand what the AWS Power and Utilities team is doing to support those security needs?
Yeah, so obviously security is always top of our mind, right? So I mentioned it several times. And um, an important thing also is that many other industries, relevant big industries like the government, like healthcare, financial services, they all have gone through a lot of cloud adoption. So, which is good because a lot of work has been done to build an environment which is truly, and many places, many utilities tell us it's a more stringent security environment being in the cloud than being on premise. So, first of all, that's a very, very important message. And then our team is engaged with NERC, so the North American Electric Reliability Corporation. We are engaging with them around critical infrastructure protection, so NERC SIP topics. We have published an executive utility guide to explain like our how we want customers or customers can think about security to really
Yeah.
take that understandable maybe concern out of the way to move forward and become agile and do innovative things, right?
Right.
That's an extremely important element for us. And then, as you know, Aileen, obviously we have our cloud, our shared security model, so a very stringent way of um, a very well-designed way of working with our customers, where we really, as AWS, focus kind of on the security of the cloud, so all the data center, hardware, infrastructure components, but then obviously support our customers with any activity they own, which is in the cloud. Obviously, there's a lot of things we offer, from encryption and all standards which are relevant for them to address. And the same in Europe. So you have,
Mhm.
in Germany, the critical national infrastructure standards. The UK has their national cybersecurity center and standards. So it's very important, again, to look at this globally and
Yeah.
holistically, and engage with our customers. And that's very, very important. So it's part of every discussion we have.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the exciting things is I know that there's a lot of new white papers and resources out there for us to take into. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But help us frame for viewers that are tuning in, what do you see or what's important as a takeaway for key success factors as we move towards digital utilities and as we move towards that clean energy future? Like, yes, there are challenges, but there are ways that we can move forward, and there are absolutely ways that we can be successful. Can you step us through some of those key success factors?
Yeah. So once we see that a customer really is working in an agile and flexible environment and starts thinking about what innovative things I can do, I think that's really a big success for us as a first point.
So that's the foundational key piece where we start with, let's begin to think about this in an agile way. Is
Yeah,
that how you would see it?
yeah, and I can give you some examples also around the
Please.
5 solution categories with customers. Um, but before I do this, so there's obviously the agility, the flexibility, um, etc. And very important is also that we see now utilities really applying systems from a customer engagement perspective.
Yeah.
Many utilities still think about Aileen as a load or a ratepayer. You're not actually a person. You don't
Right.
know. So yeah. So which is still happening, but it's very quickly evolving. So new services and capabilities to do this. So for example, actually, I just printed out the latest list here at reInvent. We have various customers presenting on the topic. So Origin Energy had a session during reInvent around delivers great agent and customer experience.
Hmm.
Octopus Energy is talking about enhanced speech recognition accuracy using custom language models to really support their customers much better. So there's a lot of really interesting examples. So Origin, for example, increased the use of digital services by 170%, and at the same time was able to increase their sales channel, so providing new services to their customers by 70%. So using our customer or Connect for customer care solution, so Amazon
Yep.
Connect call center,
Yep.
can be a huge difference. And we see utilities really now coming to it. Actually, COVID also was a trigger. All
Yeah.
agents who now overnight had to work from home, to
Right.
give them an environment to do the same job and better at home was a
Yeah.
really big deal. So I think, yeah, it flips around from the asset I said in the beginning. There's
Yeah.
an asset-centric perspective. Obviously, still we have to build a lot of assets, don't get me wrong. So that's a critical
Right.
part. But to be at the same time, be a very customer-centric organization, that's a big step and obviously really good place for us to work in, including things we're bringing in with Alexa to have a better communication with your customers and talking about billing and energy efficiency and new programs is quite interesting.
Absolutely. And I mean, certainly there are so many sessions to choose from and wonderful examples to learn about all of these customer
I have a
stories.
few more. Do you want me to give you a few more?
Absolutely.
We're good
Go
with that.
for it.
But like, let me see, because IT transformation, I think it's good to give you some the listeners and viewers some
Yeah.
examples. So around IT transformation, so SAP is a big topic. A lot of people don't know you can run SAP on AWS.
Yep.
And also SAP ISU, which is a utility unique application. It's key. And this is not just about lift and shift, but also then once
Right.
you do this, you're unlocking all kinds of other capabilities from your SAP environment, from a financial perspective, linking this back to maybe your CRM system or other systems. So it's big. So just to bring agility there, obviously you want to move a lot of applications from your on-prem into the cloud. So Nell was one of the early ones. So within 9 months, they moved over 9,000 servers to the cloud. So you can do massive migrations with those customers, and then you achieve a lot of cost savings. In their case, 60% storage costs, 20% compute. So on the OT side, which is becoming,
Yeah.
going back to our initial message, decarbonization,
Hmm.
uh, enabling the digital utility towards a clean energy future, you need you can get a lot more out of your smart meter investment. Today, a lot of the smart meters are mainly used for billing purposes
Yeah.
and don't really take advantage of all the other capabilities you can leverage, like providing your customers with energy efficiency programs, do some more consumption analysis using this data. So now moving all this data, before some people told us 95% of the data they collect with meters, they just threw away. They didn't even use. It was too expensive. They
Yeah.
didn't have the means to deal with the data. Now we see through customers like Vector in New Zealand, our partner Siemens, they're moving their whole energy IP metadata management system onto AWS. Now this enables to provide more services, but also instead of doing a daily meter read, you can go down to maybe 5 minutes, 15 minutes. So to have a decentralized system and provide all this renewable integration, you need, as I said, a lot more flexibility. So your smart meter environment has to keep up with that move. And
Right.
so we actually created a metadata um, analytics quick start, which is kind of a sandbox, if you want, for
Yeah.
utilities, anybody to just work with this and kind of play with our MDA data lake to simplify it.
Well,
So
yeah, and
just some examples. And customers like, so just I want to finish the list.
go for it.
PGE, so Portland General Electric, they are talked about the operational improvement on AWS. So they had some really great examples. I watched this yesterday on estimated time to repair and pole inspections using drones and all kinds of cool technology. So did San Diego Gas and Electric. They had a session on fighting wildfire with artificial intelligence. So both examples really fit into the asset and work optimization category. I mentioned Origin, I mentioned Octopus, and some other really cool examples where people show off edge devices using IoT for wind farm analytics. So please, if you haven't seen them, I think they're all going to be available soon to watch at your leisure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, think what's exciting about this is there's so much more power and potential in what we can do with data, right? Now that we're able to bring it all together. And if I think about it at the customer level, having those sort of smart meters to be able to tell me more about, well, what does my home usage look like and how might I be able to
Yeah.
optimize that instead of just here's a reading for a bill. So there's a lot of new things that are opening up, which is really, really
Well,
exciting.
we talk
So
about no, we talk about. Sorry to interrupt. We talk about
please,
like gamification also of those environments because you have to make it fun, right? Because I think naturally people might not really want to engage, but if there's interesting offerings, obviously to save money is an element, but also we're all becoming a lot more sensitive towards
yeah.
climate and the environment and sustainability. So to bring this all together and do it in a way that it's meaningful but also easy, um, everybody will be a much bigger participant in this effort. And again, sustainability you see in many places, and this is also a big driver around the 3Ds.
Absolutely. And let's chat a little bit more about sustainability because I agree with you that you need something to be meaningful, right? It needs to have that kind of impact and it also needs to be easy to do because if the barrier is too high or if it feels like the impact isn't there, folks aren't necessarily going to commit
Mhm.
to it. So that's important. But I know we only have a few minutes left, but let's talk a little bit more about sustainability. Any reflections that you can share?
There's also talk about we ourselves as Amazon, and when we
Yeah.
announced our climate pledge last year, a lot of new companies joining us, which is super exciting. We actually
Yep.
reduced our targets to 2025 to become 100% renewable energy. I think our target for net zero is obviously still 2040. Today, we actually a lot of news around
Yep.
the fact that Amazon kind of became the corporate or the world's largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy. And this is an amazing milestone to achieve also our 2040 climate pledge goals. 10 years before, ahead of the Paris Climate Accord. So these are tremendous results. So we now ourselves have 6.5 gigawatts of renewable energy. So that's a very extensive portfolio we have, and supplies a lot of energy. So obviously there's our aspect from a renewable energy perspective, but then
Sure.
obviously our customers, they're all uh, demanding it and talking about it. We enabling, for example, NG Impact, with the right tools to offer, so they can offer their customers um, services to help them with their sustainability goals. And the same with a lot of partners we obviously have in our portfolio who work with us. So all the ISVs, the system integrators. So
Yeah.
there's a big portfolio of partners which are obviously essential in this scenario.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's so much more opportunity for us to learn and discover. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is you do have so many new blog
Mm,
postings and white papers on the website. So really digging into show me these examples, show me these customer
mm,
stories. For folks that want to explore more, we've not only got all of the video on demand
mm,
sessions from reInvent that
mm.
Rolf alluded to earlier, but there's all of these other great new blog posts and white papers that are right there on the website. Do
Yeah.
you have any other closing comments for folks that have tuned in today?
Yeah, again, this is a super exciting industry and market. It's so meaningful. So I think we all love our job just because it's not just a job, but also we really can make a difference. And so I encourage everybody who's listened to, yeah, read those blogs. I think they're almost once a week. We have a new one, a lot of new
100%.
announcements, and they're super valuable and helpful. And you learn from our customers, our partners, and anything new, and sometimes just some good thought leadership discussions in those blog posts. So please come there and visit those. Yeah, thanks so much,
Absolutely.
Emily.
No, wonderful. Thank you so much. Rolf, it's been an absolute pleasure to be with you today. So this closes this session of AWS On Air, Industry Live session on power and utilities. I'm Aileen Gemma Smith, your host. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.